In an age when honor was worth more than gold, and courage was the currency of kings, men clad in steel met not for war, but for glory. Their battleground wasn't the field of conquest, but the arena of spectacle. These were the grand tournaments of knights, where legends were born, oaths were forged, and death was always just one misstep away. Join us as we uncover the forgotten glory of how medieval tournaments really worked. It all began in the 11th century. Emerging from the brutal reality of medieval warfare, knights, the armored tanks of their time, needed constant practice to stay sharp for real battle. So, they created mock wars, massive chaotic brawls known as melees. Imagine dozens, sometimes hundreds, of warriors clashing in a free-fall, a whirlwind of steel and sweat. These early games were incredibly dangerous and bloody. There were few rules, and the line between training and genuine combat was blurred. Survival was often the only prize. But as the centuries passed, kings and powerful nobles saw potential in this violent pastime. What started as raw, brutal training began to transform. It evolved into a grand social event, a magnificent spectacle that was part ceremony, part chaos, and all about prestige. The tournament became the ultimate stage for a knight to prove his worth, not just as a warrior, but as a gentleman. It was a place to win fame, fortune, and the favor of the powerful. Organizing a tournament was a monumental undertaking, a true feat of logistics. Heralds and messengers on horseback would ride for weeks, traversing entire kingdoms to deliver sealed, formal invitations to noble houses. And make no mistake, this was an exclusive club. Only those of proven noble lineage, knights with a verifiable coat of arms, were even allowed to compete. This wasn't a contest for common soldiers, it was a showcase for the aristocracy. Weeks, sometimes months, before the first trumpet sounded, the tournament grounds would come alive. Armies of carpenters and craftsmen would descend, erecting massive wooden stands, or lists, for the lords, ladies, and other distinguished spectators. Painters would work tirelessly, adorning banners, shields, and pavilions with the vibrant colors and crests of competing families. The air would thicken with the smell of sawdust, fresh paint, and anticipation. And what's a festival without a feast? Merchants flocked to the site, setting up bustling markets. They prepared mountains of food-roasted boar, venison, and fowland, brought barrels upon barrels of wine and ale. The tournament was far more than just a series of duels. It was a multi-day festival of honor, power, and pageantry. It was a stage where a king could display his kingdom's wealth, where a noble family could flaunt its might, and where alliances were cemented over shared spectacle and overflowing goblets of wine. For the knights themselves, the morning of the tournament began not with a war cry, but with a prayer. They would rise at dawn, attend mass, and confess their sins. They knelt before chaplains, blessing their swords, lances, and armor. This wasn't just a sport. It was a sacred duty, performed under the watchful eye of God. Each contest was imbued with a spiritual weight, a trial of both physical strength and moral character. This deep sense of spiritual duty was woven into the very fabric of the tournament, the code of chivalry. This wasn't just a romantic idea from storybooks. It was a set of real, enforceable rules. Knights swore oaths to fight with honor, to show mercy to a defeated opponent, and to respect their rivals as brothers in arms. Striking a knight from behind, attacking his horse, or continuing to fight once an opponent had surrendered their sword were all strictly forbidden. A victory without virtue was no victory at all. It was a stain on one's reputation, a public shame that could follow a knight for the rest of his life. At the very heart of every tournament, the event that captured the imagination of all was the joust. Picture it, two knights, encased in over 50 pounds of gleaming plate armor, mounted on powerful warhorses or destriers, bred for strength and courage. They would position themselves at opposite ends of a long fenced-off lane called the tilt. Then, at the signal, they would spur their horses into a thunderous charge, hurtling toward each other at a combined speed of over 40 miles per hour. Lances were lowered, shields were raised, and hearts were steady. The objective of the joust was a masterclass in controlled violence. The goal was not to kill, but to display superior skill, precision, and power. The ultimate aim was to strike the opponent's shield squarely with the tip of the lance. A perfect, clean hit called an attorney would shatter the specially designed, blunted lance in a spray of splintering wood, earning the most points and a roar of approval from the crowd. Unseating a rival from his saddle was the pinnacle of success, a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph that sent the audience into a frenzy. The sound of the tournament was the heartbeat of the Middle Ages, the sharp crack of splintering wood, the deafening crash of steel on steel, the heavy thud of a knight falling to the earth, and above it all, the roar of the crowd. This was the symphony of chivalry. But behind every cheer, behind every moment of victory, the shadow of danger loomed large. A lance could miss the shield and strike a weak point in the armor. A fall from a galloping horse could be fatal, with knights sometimes being crushed by the weight of their own steel. Glory and death truly rode side by side in the tournament arena. But it's crucial to remember that tournaments were as much theater as they were combat. They were elaborate performances designed to reinforce the social order. Lords and ladies, draped in silks, velvets, and gold, watched from elevated balconies. Their presence wasn't just decorative, it was political. The tournament was a place for them to be seen, to display their wealth, and to engage in the delicate dance of courtly politics. Poets and troubadours roamed the grounds, composing epic verses and songs about the valor of the champions, ensuring their deeds would be remembered long after the dust settled. For the victor, the rewards were immense. After the final contest, the winning knight, bruised and exhausted, would kneel before a chosen lady of the court. She, in turn, would bestow upon him the grand prize, perhaps a prize horse, a jeweled helmet, or a purse of gold. But more valuable than any material prize was the symbolic honor. He might receive a ribbon from her gown, a delicate kiss on the cheek, or a simple blessing. To wear a maiden's favor, her scarf or token tied to his helmet or arm was to carry a symbol of her admiration, a public declaration of his worthiness and valor. For a knight, the tournament wasn't just a fight, it was a legend written in steel. But, like all golden ages, the age of chivalry and the grand tournament could not last forever. By the 15th and 16th centuries, the world was changing. The invention and proliferation of gunpowder weapons, cannons, and muskets fundamentally altered the face of warfare. A heavily armored knight on horseback, once the master of the battlefield, was now vulnerable to a common foot soldier with a firearm. The age of the sword and lance began to fade. The grand arenas, once ringing with the clash of steel and the cheers of thousands, fell silent. The knight, that iconic figure of honor and martial prowess, slowly became a memory, a romantic relic of a world that no longer existed. The tournament transformed into a more stylized, less dangerous form of courtly entertainment before disappearing almost entirely. Yet, even now, centuries later, the echo of their courage still rides through the winds of time. The tournaments may be gone, the armor may rest in museums, but the spirit that drove those knights, the spirit of honor, bravery, and the pursuit of excellence lives on. Because in every age and every walk of life, there are those who strive not just for material gain, but for something greater. They fight for the belief that courage itself, that facing a challenge with integrity and strength, is the truest victory of all. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the world of medieval knights, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss another adventure into the past. We'll see you in the next one.